Hello and welcome to this, the brand new £72 million Museum of Liverpool, the first national museum to be built in Britain for over a century. So how long did the museum take to create?
It took about 10 years from when we first mentioned it. It took about 5 or 6 years since we first got the funding, and the first significant funding was from the North West Development Agency, which of course is now under threat of abolition. Well, it's been announced it will be abolished, and if we hadn't built this museum when we did, we wouldn't have been able to raise the money for it. So there was a window of opportunity that happily we were able to seize some regeneration funding, and there'll be a lot less money of that kind around in future.
Okay. And how much did it cost to build, and where did you get the funding from?
To build, about £45 million. To create a museum as well, about 72 million. The bulk of the funding came from the North West Regional Development Agency, which is now, of course, about to be abolished. So if we hadn't got the money at the time from an agency that was then around, we wouldn't have been able to get the money at any other time. Some money from Europe and a sizable sum of money from the Heritage Lottery Fund. So the kind of sources that a project like this needs to look to get going. You know, you're looking to places that do fund particularly cultural regeneration projects.
And what do you hope the museum will bring to Liverpool?
Well, first and foremost, it will be a fantastic educational resource for people living in and around it. In other words, people that are able to visit it lots and lots and lots. That's really why we've done it. We are an educational institution. That's primarily what a museum does. But also it will help give an extra layer of attractiveness for Liverpool for visitors from outside. We already get lots of people coming from elsewhere. You know, Liverpool is surprisingly high up in the place that tourists want to visit. After London and Edinburgh, Liverpool's not that far behind, which might surprise some people. So this will give an extra reason to come to the city, and which is important because it generates spending and it generates jobs.
And how do you think this museum represents Liverpool's identity?
In lots and lots of different ways. You can either take the museum as a whole, or you can look around at the loads and loads and loads of different things that are in here, whether it be collections of objects or people's recordings, their opinions, photographs, films and so on. And there is no single version, you see, of the story of a city. There are many thousands of versions of the stories of the city, and that's what a museum like this has to try and capture. So there's no simple answer to that. It captures it in lots of ways.
And what's your favourite object in the museum?
Favourite object? So many, it changes every time I think about it. I quite like Bill Shankly's raincoat, but that will offend all Evertonians, so I probably need to find something else to say. There's a poster in the Football Immersive that demands the sacking of Margaret Thatcher. I'm quite keen on that.
What inspired the building?
It's actually the site that inspired the building. This is a place where all the different lines meet. So we came up with an idea about making a nexus, a crosspoint of all the different lines. And that inspired the main idea. And then it's a place where there used to be a shipyard. So the forming of the building is inspired by ships. And we wanted to make something that was in connection with this promenade. As you can see, the promenade sort of breaks up and becomes a building. So it's very much in connection with the site.
All right. And when you were building this, what did you have to take into consideration? Considering it's such a modern building and such a historical area, were there certain factors that you had to take into consideration?
Yeah, it is a World Heritage Site, so it's actually a place you shouldn't maybe build, but we were going to anyway. So we were trying to do another story and put something in that's not here, was not there before we built it. There was no shelter, there was no lifted up places. So we made this more land art, you can call it. You can walk up there and then you can overlook this area that's going to be an event area in the future too. And you can go to the other side and you have shelter. So we created shelter in a lifted up area.
And what do you hope that the building's going to bring to Liverpool?
I think it's going to bring identity. It has the three races. That's very much Liverpool's identity, but this is a new identity. Liverpool has now got a new beginning. That's what I feel. We started on this 7 years ago, and 7 years ago there was not very much happening in Liverpool. But now I feel a new energy in Liverpool. So this could be a symbol of that too.
So how would you describe the museum?
The Museum of Liverpool is a new city history museum right in the heart of Liverpool's waterfront, between the Albert Dock, the 19th century warehousing and the pier head, which is the early 20th century. And here we are in a new building right at the beginning of the 21st century, a city history museum which is all about Liverpool. And not just Liverpool looking internally, looking at Liverpool in terms of British history and its global role as well.
So how is this museum different from other museums?
This museum is perhaps different in that you enter the museum in the heart of the museum. There's no fixed route around the museum, you can choose where to go. We've got different galleries on our ground floor, first and second floors.
In this museum, you've said that there's several galleries. Why have you chosen to put things in different galleries rather than have it just all in one?
We chose some kind of key themes. So looking at Liverpool as a port city, so we're developing a gallery called The Great Port, and that opens a little later this year. We wanted to look at Liverpool's global role, so we've developed a gallery which has the title of Liverpool as a global city. That gallery is quite different in that the majority of it is for special exhibitions, and our first special exhibition looks at Liverpool and Shanghai and the links over the last 150, 160 years or so, and that's called East Meets West. And then later on we're going to be opening a theatre in there that has a big film show about Liverpool's kind of global history. Up into the second floor of the museum, the People's Republic looks essentially at the social history of the city over the last 300 years or so. And in that space we've created some permanent displays, so some of the really core exhibits that we wanted to show some major points of our collections as well. And then we've created space for a whole range of special exhibitions, and we've got 3 special exhibitions opening there when we first opened. Over in Wondrous Place we decided that the core exhibitions there were around sport and music. So the actual anchor experiences are 2 immersive film theatres, one about the Beatles and one about football. And the Beatles one is really special because it tells the early story of the Beatles and their lives in Liverpool. And the football one is all about what it means to be a football fan, the kind of passion, the identity. So it's not the history of the clubs, it's about what it means.
And how many objects are there on show here?
I think so far there are about 4,000. When we've finished at the end of this year there'll be around 6,000.
What approach did you have when you designed the museum?
The approach was, when we started the museum design, was to really look at the stories of the people and sort of unfold that. So trying to find, for us it's always about finding the right theme. And when we worked with the museum, we wanted to make sure it was about the audience and what was that outcome that we wanted. So what was that emotional souvenir is what we call it. And I think we're seeing that today. It's the smiles, it's the emotions, it's the memories, and trying to find the right stories and objects to evoke those through the exhibition design.
And what would you say makes this museum so unique?
Well, we really wanted it to be about the people. A lot of times, we find in some of the museums that are developed that they don't necessarily really get the people stories, but we really wanted to make this about everyday people, a social sort of look at the life in a city, and how does that unfold, what makes a city. And really it's architecture and other things, but it's really about people. So if we can pull those stories out and make it personal, then we're really doing something different. And I think that's what this museum's all about.
And what part of the design would you say that you're most proud of?
I would say that just the way that we generally organize the galleries around larger themes within a city fabric. So the idea of a creative city in Wondrous Place, the idea of football and the Beatles, and then the social stories of Liverpool, which need to come to light. And I think in the future galleries that are going to be opening shortly, I think you'll see the wonderful transportation, the global story of Liverpool. So I think in general, it's about all of these things, because that's really what makes a dynamic city like Liverpool.
And if you could sum up the design of this museum in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Wondrous, magical, and people-centric.
The Museum of Liverpool is testament to the city's rich and fascinating history. Never before has a British museum set out to explore the story of the nation through the experiences of one city and its people. The museum provides a legacy to those people who have shaped Liverpool's history, and to those that continue to influence its future.